Hello everyone and welcome back to Make the Music. Today we're finally getting the updated video on how to match any tone in Bias FX2. Doesn't matter if you have the stems or not. I'm going to go through all those scenarios here. It's been a year since the last video and people got a lot of use out of it. There was a lot of good information, but it wasn't the most best produced video, and I've had another year at YouTube and providing information in a better way for you guys. So here's an updated video. This should cover pretty much everything, but of course you can ask a question down below if you're struggling with this process. I also have a guide, the 5 steps to getting great amp sim guitar tone in your DAW. You can find that guide in the description box down below. It's 100% free. Anyways, let's get into this process. So there's quite a bit to this Bias FX2 amp match process if you're trying to match stuff from, your favorite songs, right? And there's a lot of steps here. But once you get the process down, it's not that difficult. I've done this so many times that it's just like second nature. So I want to go over every step because it can be a bit overwhelming at first to have it done successfully or correctly. So the first thing I would do is open up Bias FX2 and Bias Amp 2 in your DAW. And I think for Bias Amp, you need at least the second tier to use amp match features. So just keep that in mind. I have the highest levels of everything in Bias, but you don't need the highest levels. I used the second tier for quite a while, matching tones. So what you want to do first, open both up. I just have them in their defaults. I think I download the latest updates. This is the latest version of Bias as well. Go ahead and plug your guitar in as well. Now you need to determine what kind of tone you're going to match. And for me, I'm just going to show you here. I'm going to match this part from Morphine Child by Savatage. This is the tone I'm going to match. First thing you want to do is pick a guitar that seems like a guitar they would use for the specific part. So I'm using my Jackson, right? It's got high gain. If you're trying to match a bluesy tone, use something with a little less output, right? So the key to matching the tones in Bias FX2 is you need to be able to import a WAV file of the tone being played, preferably by itself. Now there's some workarounds for this, as I'm going to explain here. So for a lot of songs that are popular rock metal songs, you can actually find the stems online of the guitar parts. So you could actually just look up like Metallica Enter Sandman guitar only, and there'll be a stem there, and you can just download that stem or screen capture. What I used to get my tones is I just use Camtasia to screen capture a small section of the song, and then that way I'm able to actually then match it. So what I'm going to do here real quick is this is what I'm going to use to match. I'm just going to import it in my DAW so you can actually hear it because of the way my audio settings are set up. So there's a part of this song here in Morphine Child. It sounds like this. And that's straight from the song that I pulled there, so you can just screen capture that or whatever. You actually don't need it in your DAW. That was just me doing an example of that. That part, the guitar is playing by itself. Now, what if there's no parts where the guitar is playing by itself that you can rip, or there's no stems online? What do? Well, that's a bit of a predicament. And sometimes there's actually no good solution. You're kind of actually stuck. But what I like doing is if there's very few parts that are playing while the guitar is playing, you can use something like LALA.ai, which can actually stem separate some of the sections. So you can get vocals and instrumentals, electric guitar. Keep in mind, this is not perfect. That you'll have to mess with the tone afterwards because there's going to be artifacts of other sounds in there. For example, if there's a crash out section where the guitar is playing, you're going to get some cymbal bleed in there, maybe some bass bleed in there. And you'll have to kind of use your discretion. But what you can do is import a section where you think the guitar is the loudest and clearest to hear. Maybe not isolated, but it's the loudest you can get it. Import it into this, select electric guitar, and then it'll output a stem, and you can then screen capture that stem and then use that in Bias Amp 2. That would be the approach I've used. I've done that a lot. For some reason, Savatage, Trans-Siberian Orchestra tones that I've matched, the guitar doesn't play by itself literally at all. It's very strange. So I've had to use this process a lot and kind of tinker with it and find the best places where the tone's playing by itself. So that would be the first step. Get your WAV file that you're going to use and you're going to want to match. Now back to the DAW. We now know what we want to match. So what I want to do is I'm going to record enable Bias Amp 2. And we're going to start there. So the first thing I want to do is go to Amp Match. Let's go. Welcome to Amp Match. Start Amp Match. And what's going to ask you for is I have a solo guitar track. Great. I have a folder on my computer where all my tone matched guitar tracks hang out right here. Poets and Madmen guitar. I'm going to import that in. Okay, so I've got that file imported here. Now, here's a couple tips when you're actually selecting the file, or I would say capturing the file then and putting a bias amp2. It gives you a limit of 20 seconds. You don't need to use the whole 20 seconds. I would recommend finding a good tone riff, not just some random lead or clean part or something, but a substantial riff that really encapsulates the tone, and then get like a good 5 to 10 seconds of that. That's plenty for bias amp2 to capture. It doesn't mean you get more. If you get more of the tone or you get more captured, like the full 20 seconds, that'll give you a better result. Not necessarily. It actually give you a little more variation, and it'll be harder for bias amp2 to pinpoint down what it should sound like. Believe me, I've matched like 400 tones in this. I know what it responds to well, and I've just found that that's sort of the magic sweet spot. So let's go with start capture. So it's going to analyze your file and start profiling the guitar tones. So start building out like the EQ curve, the gain, all that sort of stuff. So it's going to begin to do that here. And then you'll plug in your guitar and it'll get that input and then sort of be able to match it and level it out for your use here. Okay, so it's done analyzing. Now you're going to go to next. You're going to connect your guitar. And then you're going to select your genre. What do you select here? Well, that's going to depend on the tone you're trying to match. If it's a bluesy pop tone, I would select clean, glassy, or blues or something. If it's a retro rock tone, maybe crunch. I've found high gain for me, or high gain or insane are better than the metal channel. I don't know why. I can't explain it. I can't tell you. Maybe you've had a different experience, but like I said, I've matched so many tones in this thing, and I find the high gain and insane get a better results every time. So I'm going to actually use the insane here. Don't worry, it's not going to make your tone over gainy. I just find that it does a better job. So now I'm going to plug in my guitar. Just play your guitar freely, get some good input. Okay, now let's actually match this thing. I'm going to input in as Poets and Madmen, because that's the album that I'm matching from. Save and continue. Now we have an amp. And it sounds just like the tone. Excellent. I might do a little tweaking here. So what you can do is, especially if you have those artifacts I talked about, where you have too much bass in the tone, too much highs, you can actually mess with the post EQ a little bit. For me, this sounds good. I might boost the highs just slightly. You could mess with this, but like I said, you're going to start to drift from the profile if you start to actually mess with what they've done here. You can totally tinker with this stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to get a 100% accurate match, I would just sort of stick with what they gave you. Notice when you turn down the blend knob, it starts to reduce the EQ match. It just sounds like a PV5150, right? But now it sounds matched. Okay, what do we do to customize the look of it? Let's go here, custom background. Now you're going to want to find a picture of the album art here. So I have it downloaded. I had it on my computer. Where can you find good album art? Well, I would go to your streaming service. For me, it's YouTube Music. I click Save Image As, and then it gives you a high quality image to use. That's pretty much all I can say there. Or you can go to Google Images and download one there. I like to center it like this. That looks good. And then what I do for the grill cloth is I remove this extra grill cloth here so I can see more of the album cover. That's a personal choice, and you can kind of just customize it to make it look cool. So I'm going to go with silver knobs, but then I want a black panel like that. Maybe a red panel. No, I'll go with the black panel. So that's what I'll customize my amp as. Pretty cool. I think this is a cool feature in Bias Amp 2, honestly. Okay, that sounds great in Bias Amp 2, but we're not done yet. I'm going to go overwrite here. You could upload it to the tone cloud if you wanted, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. But now this is going to save it to like your Bias Amp 2 library. So I'm going to close that out here, and we're actually going to load it into Bias FX 2 now. So this is a just blank tone for Bias FX2. I'm going to replace it. Let me go to Bias Amp 2. I believe I used Insane. There's Poets and Madmen. I'm going to load it in here. I'm going to customize it just slightly. I'm going to add a drive pedal. Let's distortion. I'm going to add the 808. A gate. I'm going to make this real subtle here. The more pedals you add onto it, the more it's going to like modify the tone, obviously. And I'm just going to slap an EQ on. Just take out the low rumbles, stuff below 80, and the high stuff above 20K. And you can further tweak the tone here. So if you matched it pretty close, but it's not exactly how you want it, you can just mess with the EQ there. For me, I'm just going to give it a little more gain. That sounds great to me, and so now I can save it. Poets and Madmen. Let's go bank 1. And we're done. We have our amp match tone in Bias FX2 in our DAW that we can now use in our recordings. So that is the process for amp matching in Bias Amp 2, Bias FX2. A lot of moving pieces here, a lot of ways you could do this. This is my process, and I found it's worked pretty well. If you have any questions, leave it in a comment down below, and also pick up that free guide. But if you follow this process, you're going to get pretty darn close, and it's going to be fun to be able to match those tones. So thanks so much for watching. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.